What's good? It's Wood. Josh Warrington just lost his IBF featherweight title against Luis Alberto Lopez. Lopez won it by majority decision. One judge had it a draw, 114 to 114. The other two judges had it 115 to 113 in favor of Luis Alberto Lopez. And, a lot of people thought that this was going to be a very tough fight for Josh Warrington going in. I thought that Josh Warrington would eventually edge a decision win over Lopez. But, the fight was very interesting. I thought Lopez got off to a great start. He throws, these, weird angle, just kind of lunges into some of these bombs that he throws. He'll throw them high. He throws them low. He throws them pretty quickly for them coming so wide. He's able to, they get there very quickly. Josh Warrington does not have the same legs that he used to. If you watch the fight between Warrington and Lee Selby, or Warrington when he fought Kiko Martinez the first time, or Josh Warrington versus Carl Frampton, he just moved way differently than he does these days. He's a lot more stationary. Look, he was showing better legs actually in this fight in the second half of the fight, which is interesting because how Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez got off to the bad start against Estrada, and then the old guy Chocolatito came on in the second half of the fight. I felt like we got a little bit of that here, and not that Warrington is an old fighter. Age-wise, he's not an old guy, but in terms of the amounts of wars that he's been in against several very good fighters, and he's got such an energetic style where you could just feel the passion of his fighting spirit when he was beating the likes of Lee Selby and Carl Frampton. He just doesn't have those legs anymore. I don't even think he has the legs today that he had going into that fight against Mauricio Lara, where he got devastatingly, brutally knocked out in one of the biggest upsets of the year and one of the biggest knockouts of 2021. But Josh Warrington fought his butt off here in the second half of the fight. He really rallied back. Now, boxing scene, they actually scored the fight 9 rounds to 3. They gave Lopez all 8. Of the first 8 rounds, they gave him all to Lopez. I didn't see it being that dramatically all Lopez. I thought Lopez might have won 6 out of the first 8 or something like that. But Warrington was definitely winning majority of the last 4 rounds. And, Lopez did a ton of complaining too. Now, headbutts, I was concerned about going into this fight. I'm concerned about headbutts in all fights, but especially all Josh Warrington fights. And he actually addressed the reputation in the post-fight in-ring interview. I felt a little bit bad for him. I don't think that he's intentionally trying to headbutt, but his style of jumping into the pocket, he does lead with his head. And sure enough, in the second round, I think it was the second round here, he busted Luis Lopez's eye, cut it open with a headbutt. And Lopez, visibly reacted to it, where he turned, he was yelling and stuff. And, it was obviously something that he got his eye cut by somebody's forehead. Yes, it's going to hurt. And I just didn't want it to spoil the fight, but I was worried about that. And, if you look at when Josh Warrington won the belt against Lee Selby, I think there was a clash of heads that resulted in Selby getting cut. When Josh Warrington just recaptured the belt in his last fight against Kiko Martinez, there was a clash of heads early in the fight, caused a very bad cut to Kiko Martinez. Did Kiko Martinez suffer 2 cuts in that fight? One over each brow? I know he got cut over one. Let me know if he got a cut over each brow. But yeah, headbutts played a role in that fight as well. When Josh Warrington fought Mauricio Lara in the rematch, the fight was stopped because of a cut sustained by Mauricio Lara due to a clash of heads. A very bad cut too. So the cut here, it took place early. It didn't totally spoil the fight. The fight continued, and I do think that Lopez won vast majority of the early rounds. I thought that Josh Warrington's rally might have made it a draw style fight. I thought that going into the scorecards, that's what I was expecting to hear. And with a draw, Josh Warrington would have retained his IBF featherweight title. So look, he's got a lot of miles on the odometer, and it's going to be interesting to see if he's going to, I think he's going to continue. I do think that there are a couple, big fights there still for him. Whether or not they are title fights, we'll see. But look, I thought that he was given a gift title shot against Kiko Martinez because he had gotten knocked out by Mauricio Lara, never avenged that loss, but found himself in a title shot against Kiko Martinez, who had just knocked Kid Galahad out, surprisingly, to capture that IBF belt. So, beating Kiko Martinez in their rematch made Warrington a 2-time IBF champion. It's going to be interesting to see if he's able to skip to the front of the line again and maybe get a shot against somebody like Lee Wood. I wouldn't be totally surprised. Like, the fight that should be going down is like Lee Wood versus, I don't know, Mauricio Lara, or if you were going to do any sort of cross-promotional thing, you would love to see one of these guys fight like Navarrete just moved up to 130. I would have loved to have seen Navarrete fight all these other, featherweights. But, Ray Vargas, I don't know what Gary Russell Jr.'s career is going to look like going forward. But, you could do cross-promotional featherweight fights and keep things very interesting. I mean, Michael Conlan is a good one. Robeisy Ramirez is on the map. But I could just picture Josh Warrington finding himself in a high-profile fight, even maybe in his next fight against somebody like a Lee Wood. But we'll see if Lee Wood fights Mauricio Lara or Leo Santa Cruz. That's another one that was kind of being discussed and even ordered, by the WBA multiple times so they could clean up their, 2 belts in 1 division mess. But yeah, this was a very good fight. I think that if there was going to be somebody to edge the win, I think that the right guy got it. I didn't like the body language. Look, both of these guys showed a ton of heart. This was a very gritty and rough fight. But by the end of it, I got the impression that Josh Warrington was the rougher of the 2 guys. Like, in the first half of the fight, I would have said, yeah, Lopez is the more dangerous puncher, and he's arguably the rougher guy. By the end of the second half of the fight, it's like, yeah, there's no question. Josh Warrington is probably the rougher of the 2 guys. And I thought that he was going to stop Lopez by the end of it. He was coming on so strong in those final rounds, and I wasn't sure if Lopez's, because he got hit like in the lower back or high butt area, and he started limping like he had sustained an injury, and he was really, telling the ref like, no, this is a big deal, I'm hurt, and he was taking his time, just trying to stretch it out, trying to walk it off, and I'm thinking like, what just happened? But even before that, not even related to the headbutt, but there were so many instances where Luis Lopez was appealing to the ref, complaining about like Josh Warrington throwing these like punches that they weren't rabid punches, but Josh Warrington was somehow able to, like, in close quarters, throw like these short hooks that, you're throwing the punch when you're in front of the guy, but by the time the punch gets there, it's cuffing and wrapping around the side and even the back of the guy's head. So Josh Warrington was throwing these punches like in close quarters where they are kind of cuffing the side and the back of the head, but Luis Lopez was also turning away at the same time, which makes it look even more like a punch to the back of the head. So there was like a lot of that going on, and it seemed like at every juncture, Luis Lopez was complaining about something to the ref. If it wasn't the hits to the side near the back of the head, it was, the punch to the kind of, lower back, upper butt area. Obviously the headbutt, that's legit. But it just seemed like there were several instances. And then, so in the late rounds, I was wondering, are those appeals to the ref, are they legitimate still, like every time Lopez is bringing something up? Or is he trying to stall and buy time because he's starting to fade in this fight? Like, Warrington was coming on very strong, surprisingly strong in those last few rounds. He showed every bit of craft that he had. He showed every bit of veteran savvy that he had. Josh Warrington was pulling out all the stops, and he was just letting his hands go to where Lopez started doing most of the holding by the end of this fight. Like, he looked like he was barely able to stand up. He was taking shots. I thought that he was going to go down like in the 11th or 12th round. Warrington looked like he was going for the stoppage, and like he had Lopez hurt a couple of times late. So yeah, that was a great rally for Warrington, but it was just shy of being enough to overcome the early deficit that he had fallen into as Lopez got off to the pretty sizable lead. So yeah, interesting fight. Again, both guys showed a lot of guts and a lot of heart in this fight. Let me know what you thought about Warrington versus Lopez. Who did you think was going to win? Again, I thought that Warrington was going to edge a close decision. I thought that veteran savvy and just his experience in fighting 12 rounders won. I mean, I think that this was Lopez's first time fighting in 11th and 12th round. I think I even heard that on the broadcast. But I thought that Warrington's experience fighting very good fighters, fighting long fights, fighting very grueling fights, I thought that that was going to rule the day. And I thought that he was going to edge the decision. But, you know, after watching the first few rounds and seeing Lopez build that lead, I thought Lopez might score a stoppage or a knockout over Warrington, just because I thought that if Warrington wasn't getting his way in the first few rounds and was losing all these early rounds, I didn't think that him at his stage would have been able to be the more effective fighter during the second half of the fight necessarily. I thought that it was just going to be more and more of an uphill battle for Josh Warrington. I thought his legs were going to get more tired, but his legs looked fresher in the second half of the fight than they did in the first half of the fight. But yeah, interesting fight. Luis Lopez, it's going to be interesting who they mandate that he defend his newly earned IBF title against. And again, at first I was thinking, damn, does Josh Warrington retire? But nah, I'm thinking that he's got a couple, again, money fights left in him. We'll see if, you know, they eventually do, like, I don't know, like even Leo Santa Cruz versus Josh Warrington. Even though, again, anytime you're talking cross-promotional fights, you've got to deal with the politics and just the lack of likelihood that that's actually going to get done. But yeah, let me know what you thought about this fight. You know, I was impressed by the way that Luis Lopez fought, especially the first, I would say 2/3 of the fight. I didn't love what I saw from him in the last few rounds. He was holding on. I mean, he must have been hurt because he really wanted to win this fight badly. You could tell, but he didn't seem like he had a ton left to give in those last few rounds. And whatever he did have to give, he was throwing those punches, just not nearly as many punches as Warrington was when Warrington was coming on strong towards the end. But yeah, close fight. I think that the right guy won though. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this one. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you were into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.